All right. Welcome to episode 2 of They're Here. On today's episode, they are my Uncle Randy.
Hello.
Do you want to give a little introduction on who you are and
Well, how I became your uncle, or what do you want? What do you
yeah.
want to say?
So one of the criticisms I got on the last podcast was that I didn't give enough of an introduction to Jordan. So he told his whole story. He had a whole it was about 2 hours long, and then someone was like, "But who is he's your cousin? But how do you know him?" So just So my Uncle Randy, married to my Aunt Sharon's, been my uncle the majority of my life, as far back as I can remember, really.
Actually, your high school graduation, I think, was one of the events that I went there with your aunt.
Okay.
Chafee.
Yeah, so it's but that's a whole lifetime.
Yes, 30 years, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a friend of mine today, I was just talking to a good friend of mine from high school, and he's like, "Yeah, we've been friends for 30 years." And I was like, "We're not supposed to be able to say that. 30 years? We're saying 30 years now when we're talking about stuff from high school."
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah.
It's much worse for you.
Yes. That it is, sir. That it is.
So the premise of the They're Here podcast is I want to have conversations with people about things that normally wouldn't talk about.
Okay.
So we have all these family gatherings, right? Birthdays, Christmases, Easters. We all spend time together. We all kind of chit chat and stuff. And I think that one of the conversations that doesn't really get discussed is religion. And I think rightfully so, because in those venues, in those areas, it could get like a heated thing, if you have different opinions. And who wants to spoil Christmas?
Yeah.
It's like going to Thanksgiving dinner and being like, "Hey, so I voted for Trump. How about you?"
Yeah.
It's gonna, regardless of what everybody's opinion is, it's a controversial topic. So when it comes to religion, so a little bit of background. I'll let you speak for yourself, but for me, I grew up in what I believe to be a very Christian household. I was, taught the Bible. The kind of the topic of what today we're going to discuss today is I was brought up, raised that the Bible was the inerrant word of God. I went to Sunday school. My mom, my mom's the one that really guided that, but my dad gave no pushback. He was basically let my mom decide the religious passing down of, to the kids. Mm-hmm. So I couldn't tell you where my dad stands when it comes to this topic, but he was never really big on it. He goes to church now, but he'll even tell you, like, I go because your mom wants me to. Your mom wants to go, so I go. So all my life, raised in a Christian household, never read the Bible, always heard it, went to church, bored out of my mind, was always confused, was always like, I don't get it, but hey, whatever, you take it for what it's worth. You take it at like face value. You go about your day, you say things like God bless you, you do prayers, you walk the footsteps of what you've just been told, And so I prayed, I never got anything out of it. Not until I was about 35 did I actually go, you know what? Why can't I just investigate this myself? Like, it doesn't make any sense why I'm just sitting here going, oh, I'm so confused. I don't have like an actual, I haven't landed on an actual opinion of this. Like, I just let it be. And I think a lot of people do that. But it's something that's been like a staple in my life, So I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm going to do. So then I actually read the Bible. And then I started reading, different scholars, biblical scholar stuff about it, the other people's interpretations and, what the Bible even is, who wrote the Bible, all these good stuff. And so as I started doing this investigation I would say over the course of 5 years, it took about 3 years of actually painstakingly studying to get to a point where I went, oh, okay, I'm not convinced. So for purposes of people understanding where I come from, I do claim to be atheist. But I don't even think that's a good word. And this isn't an original thought by me. It's something I heard, but that's how I relate to it. I think atheist is a weird thing to say because it's like, why do we have a word for atheist? Like, is there a word for not believing in Santa? Like, is there an a-santist? Or what? You know what I mean? Is there a word for not believing in fairies? but there's a word for that. But also, I think I've landed on the opinion that I don't think anybody knows. So as far as that, I think the proper term would be agnostic. So I claim to be atheist just so people are aware that I give a very low probability to the existence of God. I give an even lower probability that it is the Christian God. And that's where I'm at now, but I don't put it to zero. So that's why I would go agnostic. I also think that nobody knows, so I would actually even put words in people's mouth and say, you know, you claim whatever you claim, you're for sure agnostic, because there's no way you know. It took me a long time to get to this point, but I actually got to the point where I was like, I can't tell this to my kids. I can't pass this, what I believe to be false, on. And so I presented it to them like, hey, this is where I'm at now. And they're already, you know, I raised them like my mom raised me. I put them in church. They did Christian Bible schools. They did, you know, camps and, you know, all that good stuff. I think they still kind of dabble a little bit when it comes to my mom inviting them and stuff. But, you know, I basically got to the point where I told them, you know, I think, you know, without using terms that could be offensive or insulting, I don't think that the Bible is like an accurate account of. I think it's false. I think there's a lot of problems with it, but I just believe the religion in itself as a whole is false, and so I tell that to the kids. And you know, the first thing that kind of comes up is like, okay, well, what happens when we die then? There's a flag. And so my answer to them for that is, I don't know. Nobody knows. And anybody who tells you that they do know is lying to you. So that was a long introduction, but go ahead. I'd like to hear where you stand.
Yeah, let me tell you a little bit about myself then, so you coming from, because first of all, thank you for sharing and telling me where you're at, and more importantly, I've always looked upon you as someone who's got a lot of great common sense, and you got a lot of book knowledge that you've read. But sometimes we can get so much knowledge, we can get ourselves twisted and turned, right? Mm-hmm. And we just can't get it to application. But let me just tell you where I came from, right? So in order to come to the point of being able to be blessed by being married to your aunt, I had to go through my own trials and tribulations, right? So, you know, drinking at a young age, alcohol was prevalent back in those days. You know, in the 70s, we were still coming out of the 50s, 60s, where it was okay to drive. The alcohol was still legal, you know, basically an open container in the car. It was cool if a cop pulled you over. You know, my uncles or aunts.
Get home safe.
Go home safe, yeah, exactly, right? So, you know, they have you go run and get a beer for them. You crack it open, you take a swig, and bring it to them, right? Just one of those things, right? So alcohol was there. But then, you know, you get married as a kid, 19 years old.
You got married?
Got married at 19. She was 17.
I didn't know you had a wife before.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we had 3 kids together, but we were kid.
I did. Oh, okay. Now, okay.
Yeah, and now you're putting it together. But yeah, so but being kids, a lot of growing up to do, mm-hmm. right? Alcohol was prevalent. Not a good thing, not a good mix when you're trying to grow up and raise kids. But when my daughter was born, Kristen, our youngest daughter now, it was an eye-opening experience, right? The boys, they're boys, right? And you're a boy, you're a man. It's all good. Mm-hmm. Nothing changes. But when the daughter comes, life changes, mm-hmm. and things start to open up. So in my life, God was working in those particular instances, and you know. But we were still having trouble as a husband and wife, and it ended up she left one day and didn't want to come home, and we got a divorce. Well, that was like rock bottom for me, right? So life is upside down. You look at it through lenses, and you say, well, "What's up? You know, where are you at headwise?" And you look at it and you say, drinking is not a good thing. So the day that she left was the last time I had a drink.
Really?
That was it. Now, I was, back in the time when it was very, how do I want to say it, we were very antagonistic to each other while we're fighting in the divorce for the kids or custody or money over money.
Been there, done that.
That you know, you told, it was mentioned that I stopped drinking because I don't have her in my life anymore, right? But there was more than that, right? It was more. The decisions are yourself. You know, they're your choices, right? They're not blaming on somebody else. And so over that time, the Lord brought me back. I was floating around in church, as you mentioned. Was taken to Methodist as a kid. What you mentioned, you bored to death. I mean, when my mom would take me in the Sunday school classes, they were so, I'd say, just nothing there. They weren't exciting. They weren't teaching anything, really, right? Some of the key points you were mentioning was religion trying to be stuffed down. This is how you're supposed to do, what you're supposed to do. It wasn't necessarily talking about the relationship that you want to have with Jesus Christ, your Lord and Savior. So with that all said and done, heck, at times I could skip out at Sunday school, never go, have to drop my brothers and sisters off, and then just be back around by the time my mom picked us up for class. It was that kind of thing. Then you skip forward, and then in high school, bribing my aunt, she was caught up into the Jesus movement with Chuck Smith out of Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa. And their big tent revivals and stuff like that. In order for me to be able to use her car, I was 16 and wanted to drive, I would have to go to these big tent revival things. And there was a message that hit home, and I actually rededicated my life at that time. But that was still in high school, and I was still drinking in high school. So there wasn't really a true relationship. I'll put it this way. For the most of my life, up to the age of, well, at least to 1989, I had God in the box, right? I had him when I pulled him down when I needed him, right? Like a prayer, like you said. You mentioned, you prayed, never really saw anything out of it. Well, I prayed. I could see some fruits of it, but then I put it back in the box and said, okay, next time I need you, I'll bring you down so I know where you're at. With all that said and done, we have the opportunity now. I'm going to Calvary Rialto because the divorce is going through. I'm going there for some counseling.
You go there still, right?
To Rialto, we visit every now and then, but we go to Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills.
Oh, yeah. Makes more sense.
Because location and the teacher. Anyways, going back to Rialto, so get involved there, play softball, just going on and getting plugged in and getting taught the Bible, okay? Not preached to. And I think that's where a lot of people can get confused. They're sermonettes or they're preaching to. They're not encouragement to be drawn into that right relationship that one wants to have so that you know, because people struggle, right? I have this knowledge, but do I really know? Well, you don't know because you don't have a right relationship. If you don't have a right relationship, you don't know, even though how much you might know. It's kind of sound like I just ran around in a circle, but it's true. You're chasing your own tail. In regards to that, I could have all the knowledge in the world, but if I don't have that right relationship with whom I want to have that knowledge with, it's useless, right? So with that said, we came back around and that rededication and just being plugged in at Calvary Chapel, Rialto, taught the Word, good counseling, and got right, and cleared up a lot of things, and then this lady kept coming to my location to service a soda machine that her now ex-husband I had requested because I played softball. He played on the softball team with us at church. Had put in our work, and one day I happened to notice that she didn't have her wedding ring on anymore.
Oh.
And I said, can I be bold enough to ask you out?
You said those words?
Yeah, I said because she was just dropping off the sodas and stuff like that, and she said, basically, yeah, we can go to lunch. Basically do lunch, and that's how our relationship began with your aunt, and it's been a awesome time since then. But I can tell you this much: if I did not know the Lord, I wouldn't have that young lady as my wife today. So that's where I'm coming from. Is that the reality is that I believe he's real, because I know he's real, because I've seen him in the experience of my own life.
Okay.
To each his own. But the problem is that when we talk about it and we don't believe there's a creator, we get lost in our own head knowledge, because we can look around and we can understand that creation, there's good, there's evil, there's all those type of things. I'm sure just knowing you and how loving you are as a father, as a matter of fact, so much so that you didn't want to pass along anything, as you mentioned, anything wrong to your own kids, that you shared with them to get their own perspective, allow them to make their own judgments, that when they were born, you had completely unique feelings about being a father.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Loving, just wanted to love on them and stuff like that. And you can't get that from the world. It's got to come from somewhere. Where does that kind of love flow through? Because we're not built that way. We're not geared in that normal direction.
Well, I mean, so I usually this is at the point where, like, at a family gathering or something, like the conversation, this is where I shut up. You know what I mean? But the point of this is to extrapolate on these things. But it's like, just on that topic, I mean, love, I can cry right now talking about how much I love my kids. You know, the birth of my first daughter, watching her come out, was the single most, at that point in my life, was the single most, there's not even a word for it. Like, it happened, and I just bawled. I out loud
emotions, right?
Out loud
just
cry.
Flowed, right? It just flooded with it, right?
The way I can describe the feeling was like an overwhelming abundance of joy, and uncontrollable, you know. And then I experienced it another 2 times, and there was a part of me that thought, oh man, would this be weird if I don't feel that same feeling this time? Because maybe I'm kind of numb to it now that I've experienced it. Like it never happened 2 more times.
Right.
And so, to your point of saying, oh, where does that come from? I honestly just think it's a genetic thing in us that it's just like so the reason why the human race even flourished since it started, you know, like 200,000 years ago, the ones that survive are going to be the ones that take care of their kids. I mean, we're one of the only species on the planet that have such a delicate infant. Like, you know, dogs, wolves, buffalo, all these animals out there, they just give birth in the wild. And some of them don't even take care of their kid. Fish, you know, you name it. But a human baby will die if it doesn't have a parent that cares for it. So if we were just all like selfish, and that wasn't in our genetic makeup of having the emotion of love and affection for our kids, we wouldn't have flourished this way. And so I know that it doesn't explain where that emotion comes from, but in my opinion, it's like it just describes what it is without having to say. I don't need to invoke a supernatural power to understand that genetic makeup of us is something that is essentially necessary to where we are now as a species. So,
okay, so if there was no creator, how would you get that experience then? Because if it's genetic makeup, right?
Yeah.
Then I would,
like, I'm just saying, if we didn't have that,
so
we wouldn't be where we are today as a species. Yeah. And I know that's not answering the question of where it comes from, but I'm okay with that at that point. Like, you can take any one topic and continue back and then go, yeah, but what made that? But what made that? But we can also, when I get to that point, I go, okay, I don't know. But to invoke something to go, okay, it's God. There's where God is, right? It's like, well, I mean, we don't know what that is. So to I think a more accurate description of what I'm thinking is, I don't know, seems to be the more appropriate answer, as opposed to, oh, that's God made that.
Well,
you know,
I got you. I see your watch. Who's the maker of that watch?
The watchmaker analogy? Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, but
So
it's also, you could also do the puddle analogy. You know, it's like it's like when you have, if you ever heard the puddle analogy?
No, share with me.
You got like a pothole in the middle of the road,
Right.
and it rains, and it fills up with water, right? Perfectly level. That puddle can kind of be aware of where he's at and go, wow, look at this hole. Like, I fit. It literally, there's no way, like, the odds of this, me perfectly fitting in this, this must be God, like, created this for me perfectly. But it's, I mean, you could explain it just with gravity and, like, liquid dynamics. Like, you know, like, it's not, you don't need to invoke the God to say, okay, what, and so, I mean, to the watch analogy, the watchmaker analogy, it's like, oh, you have a watch, you found a watch on the beach, you don't know, where it came from, but you for sure don't say, nothing made this.
Correct.
You're going to say, oh, this got made.
Right.
But, yeah, like, humans make things,
Yeah.
so that's obvious.
But what happens when the car drives over that pothole and gets the flat tire?
Yeah. So,
Right?
but
Because they thought it was flat.
But all these things are explainable through, like, nature to a certain point, and then just to invoke God at a certain point and go, that's what I'm saying, is you get to a certain point, you go, okay, there's where our knowledge and understanding ends as a species. We don't understand what comes before that. Who made us? I have no idea. What came before the Big Bang? Have no idea. There's all these things, but anybody can say, well, that's God.
Well, and think about it where someone might be coming from, as I have, right? I'm coming from the fact that I believe the Bible is the inerrant word of God, and with how long it's been out there in the world for it to be disproven, it hasn't.
It has, absolutely has. But it's so here's where the conversation to me gets very interesting.
Okay.
I will say this: when I started finding errors in the Bible, contradictions, things that science has already proven out to be flat out false, can
you share with me?
Oh, there's a ton of them.
Well,
Okay. So, how about this? We'll because it's such a, it'll just keep, to go.
Sure.
It'll get away from us real
Okay.
quick. But so, for example, one of the reasons why I actually chose you is because I was like, oh man, there was this one time where you had said something and I wanted to ask about it, but it was not the right time.
Okay.
So I was like, bring it on, like, let's do this. So we had Christmas one year at your house, and I think this was probably like 2 or 3 years ago. And you came out with the Bible right before we ate, and you said, hey, before we get started, let's remember why we're here.
Sure.
Why are we celebrating Christmas? The birth of Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, okay. So, but then I was curious. At that moment, I wanted to ask, well, which one are you going to read? Because they're two different stories, and they actually contradict each other.
Is there where?
So we only have the birth narrative in 2 books, in Matthew and Luke. These are 2 individual writers, which we actually don't even know the names of these writers. They're anonymous. So we don't know who wrote these books, but they both write different stories. So one of the biggest contradictions of the story is, in one story, they immediately pack up and go to Egypt for certain reasons, right? And they're in Egypt for a while, and then they come back. And then the other one, there's no flight to Egypt. Like, they don't go to Egypt.
Okay, so
and that's just one of many of the
okay.
contradictions of those 2 stories.
yeah, what you have is that you have an overlay of the writers of the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Okay, and each one gives you a different perspective. If you add it all together, you can see they don't contradict each other. They're very synonymous in their sayings. If you look,
3 of them are.
Dr. Luke, who is a doctor, right? He writes it in his way, inspired by the Holy Spirit to write the Word of God. Matthew, he's talking more about some of the genealogy because he was a Jew, right? So he talks about that, gives some of that perspective. So he gives you the outlay of where Jesus was and where he's coming from. Luke is telling you from his perspective what transpired in that overlay. And one of the other things that we kind of get mixed up is I always laugh because of the nativity scene, and we throw the Magi in there, the 3 wise men. They were never there at the manger. you realize that, right? They were never there.
Well,
they're
actually only in one story.
Yeah, because they came later, after the fact.
Well, one of them was shepherds and one of them was wise men.
Shepherds were there first, so they were there at the birth.
Yeah.
But the Magi came back, and that's why Herod said when he issued the proclamation to kill the Jewish boys,
Right.
2 years or younger, because it was a 2-year travel time. That's why he didn't have a specific time. That's why Jesus had to fled to Egypt at that time, because he had to get out of there because of Herod's paranoid about the king of the Jews.
But doesn't it seem odd that, well, first of all, it seems odd to me that we know, there's a couple things we know. We know Mark was most likely written first, right? And we also know that Luke and whoever wrote Luke and Matthew, pretty much like 95% of Mark is just verbatim in those other two books. So they for sure had access to the book of Mark. John came later, and he's writing his own deal. But the synoptics, the three, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, right? Why did Mark not? If it's so important like the birth narrative is like a huge deal as far as Christians concerned, right? Like it's one of the foundational things that you guys believe in is the virgin birth and all that stuff. Why would the writer of Mark omit that?
Did he omit it?
Yeah, he did. There's no birth narrative in Mark.
Okay, but he didn't say anything against it.
No, I'm saying he just. But I feel like if
look at
these are all biographies, right?
Read the. You got to understand who's the audiences that Mark is writing for, right? So
you don't think he would have thought like this is pretty. I'll tell you what I think. I think that the writers of Matthew and Luke were trying to prove a certain theological point, and so they added in stuff to try to make that point. I mean, you mentioned the genealogy. It is mentioned in both Matthew and Luke, but one of them starts with the genealogy, and the other one's like, well, the genealogy is not that important. It'll come later in like chapter 3. But the genealogy is mentioned in both books, and they don't match. But they're both trying to prove a theological point. One of them's trying to get Jesus back to saying that he comes from Abraham. So he goes all the way back, and he's like, Abraham, and then here's the people that came, and now you have Jesus. The other one's taking him all the way back to Adam. He wants to link the first man in the Bible to Jesus. And so that genealogy goes all the way back to Adam. I mean, if the genealogy reporting is accurate, well, they can't both be accurate. We can agree on that, right?
Why can't they both be accurate?
If one of them has a different list of the genealogy than the other one, if one of them's right, then that makes the other one wrong, right?
Well, I think
and by very definition, that would be a contradiction.
First of all, let's put it this way: because I'm not an apologetic, okay, and I'm not going to sit here and say I'm a Bible scholar by any means, right? So, but I can tell you this much: if there was proven contradictions in that Bible, you'd have best-selling books out there to disprove and unclaim that Bible as being true.
There's a lot of them.
Yet they're never bestsellers, though.
I mean,
they're not bestsellers, and they don't displace the Bible. So you'd think think about it, right? If I could disprove a truth.
No, I agree with you. The Bible is a very, I think it's one of the most important pieces of literature in the history of man. I think it's very interesting. I think it's, if you engage with it, it's an awesome book. Library. But to say that it's not, it's this is where I run into difficulty. So like the first time I mentioned any one contradiction to my mom, who's devout, she's like, no, there is none. It's an inerrant word of God. That kind of actually kicks off like my whole like, oh man, like it's not, you're not lying to me because you believe that to be true. But it doesn't make it true. It's still an untruth that you're saying that these two things can be reconciled. So one of the main thing is like I want to have these conversations with people who have a different opinion than me, because how do you get to that? It's not that I'm looking to go, mic drop, gotcha.
Sure.
But what I do want to do is, hey, this is what confuses me.
Yeah.
Is there a way that you are able to reconcile these things in a way that's not just dismissive or like with a platitude like God works in mysterious ways, you know? Is there something, I mean, because that's what I'm getting from most people that are Christians and believe that the Bible is inerrant. They just dismiss it away like it's just a hand wave. Like no, we don't talk about that. And it's well, no, let's talk about it. Because even more so, I would say to my mom, I would say, shouldn't you hear the best arguments so that you could develop a good rebuttal or a good, foundationally you can have these conversations that people should be having with their kids and grandkids and, hey, the Bible's inerrant. And then someone comes to you and says, here's an obvious contradiction and you're not able to reconcile it. How do we get past that?
Yeah. Well, I think you're 100% correct in regards to that. I think dialogue and conversation is important. And I mean, we saw how important it is with the Charlie Kirk situation and stuff like that.
Holy
about him
moly.
going out there
Yeah.
and stuff. So, but I'll be honest. Reading the Bible, studying the Bible, and I guess I'll give a loose answer to what are some of the responses in the past, and then I'll dive into a point that you had sent in the text that got me thinking, and I think that's one of the points that you're trying to make, is that yes, we believe what we believe, we have that faith, we understand it, and that's what we want to take on. That's why those answers are. We know He's God. We're okay. We know it's real. One of the things that I never had heard before, which you had brought up in your text, was, did you know that there's a contradiction between the chapter 1 and chapter 2 of Genesis?
That's a good one.
And I said, I've never heard that before, because I've read that book many times.
All right.
And it never came up to me in regards to contradiction.
Okay.
But I can see that when you look at chapter 1, which is the chronological order of how God created it, all the way up to the chapter 2, verse 3, he's talking about the chronological order. Then you take it off the rest of the chapter 2, talks about 6.
I'm sorry, not to cut you off, but just real quick, do you believe Genesis is an accurate historical account of creation?
Yes.
Okay, continue.
Yeah, that I do. 6 full days, and that's it. So.
And then a break.
And then the seventh day he rested.
He rested. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. But going to that Genesis 2, where they go into more a topical in regards to where man's created, and I think where you were coming from, and I'm now putting words in your mouth because you just asked the question, and so I don't know if this is actually the area that you were coming from, was that you had said, where he talks about man was in chapter 2, it appears like man's created first, and the animals and the trees are created after him. And that gives a different account than how it was created
Correct.
in 1. It's the verb form. In the NIV, if you read that version, it says had formed, which the animals and the trees. If you look at that version.
Well, what I read was, and I am reading the NIV, is in chapter 2, it specifically says, and then you can read the Hebrew that it's written in, and it'll and translate it, and so you can read it. That, I mean, it's a pretty good translation where, I mean, he specifically says there is none. There is no animals when man is created. There is none on the earth than man. But then the account on the first account, the animals are already there.
The animals were created first before man. Yes.
Right. But the second account, he specifically says, or whoever's writing it says, yeah, there's no animals. They're not there.
No, he it's topical, but if you look at that NIV version again, you'll see it said had formed the animals and stuff like that. Not necessarily that were formed after man.
Well, the sentence is, there at this point there are none. So I don't know how else to interpret that. There are none.
I have to see.
There's none. Yeah, because then in Genesis 2, right, is when he's like, all right, I'm gonna make man now, and then man, this dude's bored. Let me give him a pal. So then he makes the animals, right. And then he starts grabbing them one by one, and hey, how about this one? How about this one? That's not working. We need to give you a mate. That's when he pulls a rib, makes. So then, but in account 1, man and woman are created at the same moment. There's not like You know, there's not. I mean, it's a very simple text. It's not. It's not very complicated. It doesn't use big words.
But yeah. It's because it's a chronological. He's giving you a chronological order.
Yeah. So in one account, a thing happens in a different order than the second account. That's where I'm confused. How could we take these two texts, right? It amazes me that these two have lasted as long as they have, and people are still in church, like yourself, and going, like you even just said right now, you're like, I've read that a bunch of times, and it never dawned on me. Yeah. Okay, well, now it's being dawned on you. What do you think?
Yeah, it's to me, I looked it up and reread it, and it was the verb form that was being used to as far as formed. The word for the Hebrew word, there's as we have had.
Well, that's my question is, so you're saying they don't contradict each other?
They do not contradict each other.
So an event happens.
Remember chronological.
Right.
So if I tell you I went to work,
yeah.
If I went to work on Friday, okay, and then I came back to you and I said I had breakfast, I drove, I had breakfast and stuff like that. Would I be wrong in that? Sorry.
No, that's fine.
Would I be wrong in that logical order because it's illogical because I would have had breakfast before I would have started to drive to work? It's not contradictory. It's just telling you a topical perspective of what that overall arching outline was on the first chapter, right? The first chapter gives me that topical or the chronological overview, and then I'm outline, and then I can plug in the timing of things. And the thing that threw me was where I thought the contradiction was in that where he formed the animals, right? And it's the verb. So I did a little more research, and it was the pre-pluralistic verb form of the Hebrew word. Had formed is what was being utilized there.
So to use your analogy to say, like, if I'm using, like, I had breakfast, I went to work. When I got to work, you know, I had 7 employees at my office waiting for me. But then now I go to the next one, and I go, when I ate breakfast, did all that, I got to work, there was nobody there. Then the employees came. Those are two different stories. Even regardless if we're going chronological, we're talking about a forward progression of events here, that one event happens and then another, and then in another story, it's plainly stating that those events took place and in a different order. Now you could massage the words a little bit to try to.
Well, yeah, not massaging the words.
But it does. I mean,
you see that the man and the.
She's probably got the Bible verse right there. So in Genesis 2, am I mistaken in saying that he says
go grab the Bible out of the car. Here, you can do this real quick.
I could definitely be mistaken. Just so everybody knows, I'm wrong a lot.
You're not. Look, Andrew, Anthony. Guess what? You're asking questions. You're not wrong. You're asking.
I appreciate that.
You are looking for answers.
Yes.
Right. You're not sitting here saying that you have the answers.
I for sure don't.
You're saying here, and what I'm saying is, I think you're seeking.
Yes.
Right? You're looking for something.
For
right?
sure.
Okay. Because I know, going back to that story, as your aunt goes and chases down the Bible for me. Hey.
Look at you, technologically savvy. Unlocking your car with your phone.
But, yeah. I forgot what I was saying. Anyways, but just going back, one of the things that I know, because common sense, I get on people when they can't apply common sense, right? I know you got it. And that's why I stopped drinking, because I said, how could I keep drinking and cloud my mind when I
need to focus.
When I want to focus, and you got to have common sense.
Yes.
Right? It's the weirdest, it's the stupidest answer to have.
Is that the mother of all Bibles there?
It actually gives us 4 versions inside here. So let's get that. Let's let it read up here.
Do you need glasses?
I got your aunt's glasses right here.
Because I'm blind. I actually have some magnifiers.
Cheaters?
Really? Yeah. I couldn't read that.
Really?
Really?
So why don't you read out of the Amplified's pretty cool. Or well, you want to read out a new international version? So you want to read one?
Okay, so first read chapter 1.
Yeah, you want to read chapter 1?
So my curiosity is to read the section where he's in chapter 2 where he says when man was formed, and specifically the sentences just before it where he says at this point there are no animals on the earth.
Yeah. So
because to your point, if Genesis 1 is an actual chronological order, for sure animals came, then man.
Yes.
Right?
100%.
So then in 2, the sentence that states, at this point, there are no animals and stuff on the...
It doesn't say that, does it?
Adam and Eve, this is the account of the heavens and the earth when they were created. When the Lord God made the earth and the heavens, and no shrub of the field had yet appeared on the earth, and no plant of the field had yet sprung up, for the Lord God had not sent rain on the earth, and there was no man to work the ground.
Okay, so no man was there yet.
But streams came up from the earth and watered the whole surface of the ground. The Lord God formed the man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living being.
Now we got man.
Now keep going.
So
Keep going.
now the Lord God had planted a garden in the east in Eden, and there he put the man he had formed. And the Lord God made all kinds of trees grow out of the ground, trees that were pleasing to the eye and good for food. In the middle of the garden were the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. A river watering the garden flowed from Eden, and from there it was separated into 4 headwaters. Do you want me to keep going?
Read
Well,
where
I think,
we're
you know what
formed.
I think where I was a little...
Where's 2:19?
I think I was getting mixed up was the plants. Right.
It's not the plants.
But he specifically says plants. There was no plants. I made man and then plants. But in the Genesis 1, man's last. Plants are already there.
Right, but it says that there was no man to work the ground.
Right.
So there's already the creation of the ground, right? Of the
Earth had already been created.
Right.
Earth was already created.
and in the earth. There was no man to work the ground, but the streams came up from the earth and watered the whole
Do I
surface,
have-
so that was already.
I didn't bring the other book. No, it's okay. And then 19. What's 19 say on that one? On 2. Yeah, that's.
But it also seems the way it reads.
Now the Lord God had formed out of the ground all the beasts of the field and all the birds of the air. So he had formed them.
Had formed.
He
Yeah.
brought them to the man to see what he would name them, and whatever the man called each living creature, that was his name. So the man.
Oh, I see. When you're talking about the...
Had brought them to him, but
Yeah.
they were already created.
So he made them, then he made man, then he brought them
Correct.
to man.
Yeah.
And that's how you're interpreting that.
Yeah. That's,
Okay.
that's the verb that's being utilized is that had formed.
Had formed.
Because I could read you these other versions, and remember, the inerrance of God's word is true. The fallacy of man in some of the versions could be because of a scribe's error or whatever the case might be. So it's very possible that could happen because we can read that same verse in 19 in King James or in New American Standard. It's going to say formed.
Yeah.
And that's going to throw people off because that's where the contrast is going to be. Because formed means there's nothing there first. Formed it means it was already there.
So then, I mean, that to me that opens up a broader question of why does God inspire confusion? You know, I feel like, so if I take it all the way back and I go, okay, to your guys' beliefs, the Bible is written, let's even take like the Old Testament, right? It's written, it's inspired by God, but you believe the New Testament is also the inspired words of God.
Oh yeah.
So God, the path that he chose to communicate to me was inspiring these anonymous authors in the New Testament to write these books, then have them translated from Greek into Latin, English.
Yeah, whatever the spoken language was back in those days.
And then my great grandfather gets a hold of that, text and starts to believe, and then passes it down the line, and then it eventually gets to my mom, and then my mom's like, here's the thing, and then I'm reading a book that's a translation of an older text that has 2,000 years old, and then I read it and go, oh, this is what I think this means, and then somebody else reads it and goes, oh, this is what I think that means, and then there could be an argument to be made that if I go to church and go, that's not what that means, then I could kind of be there. All right, you're causing problems, pal. Like, what are you doing? Like, this is what we think. This is what you should think. And then I go, wait, but why is it that your interpretation of because we're both reading the same thing, but your interpretation, what you're getting out of it is different than what I'm getting out of it. Why would God's inspired word of God allow for that confusion between two different people? And how do we know which one is having the accurate interpretation? Okay. What I think is the person that is the believer is like, oh no, I have the accurate interpretation because what you're saying lends to taking the individual away from God. And that's a no-no. Like, when I say these things, when I go, oh, look, I discovered, or this is what I read, I'm seeing this, contradiction here. The believer, it doesn't mean God doesn't exist. Doesn't mean Jesus didn't die on the cross. Doesn't mean all that stuff, right? You can still believe all that. But you have to be able to read that and go, okay, I see where you're going with this. That doesn't make sense. I still believe in God, but you're right. That's what you're saying that says. That's what that says. But they can't do that. It's very difficult for them to do that. And I would even put that on you, say it's very difficult for you to even entertain the idea of agreeing with anything that would take anybody away from God in any way. Am I accurate in saying that?
Can you give me an example?
So like we discussed the chronology in Luke and Matthew.
Sure.
There's obvious contradictions there. I don't think that you're able to go, oh, okay, yeah, there's a contradiction, because then that is like you almost foundationally have to go, oh crap, I already made a statement that there is no contradictions in the Bible. How can I go back on that now?
But let me rephrase that. I believe there could be times there's a paradox in the Bible that needs more research. Okay. Matthew is going to be written for a certain viewer, okay, a certain reader, and that's where you get. And going back to the point of how you can have two different reading of the word and two different people interpreting it differently, because it is the inerrant word of God, so it's a living, breathing thing, and it's going to affect you differently than it can affect me. It's just the way it is. Now, are there some certain foundational pieces that are in there? To your point that you made, is God the creator of all things? Yes. If you want to be a Christian, you got to believe that. If Christ has died on the cross, rose again from dead, died for our sins, you got to believe that. The blood, let the blood be an atonement, right? There's those foundationals. But there's other things that religion, okay, man inserts in that can cause confusion, right? Okay. We don't need confusion. We just need to have a right relationship with them. And to that point where you're seeking and you're asking questions, these are all great. And you know what's going to happen after I get done with this is I'm going to go back and I'm going to go pull now more additional texts on Genesis 1 and 2 and look at that, and come back and have a better answer for you next time.
Yeah, got it.
Right? Because it is a great question to seek an answer for, because if it looks confusing, what's the confusing point, right? And it's usually a reference in regards to who was he trying to impress with? Who was Matthew trying to impress with the genealogy, right? Was the intent there for the Jew and to understand how far back he went? Was it for Luke, telling him how he could have the throne and only went this far in regards to that? Why didn't Mark bring into the virgin birth? Why was that the case?
Oh wait, I misspoke. One of them takes him back to David. He wanted to associate him with David
because of the kingdom,
and the other one
of Israel
takes him back to Adam.
Yeah.
But even it wasn't even just how far back they go. The list, the names are different. So the order of the actual name, they don't match.
One followed Mary's genealogy. The other one followed Joseph's.
But if they follow Joseph's, isn't Joseph not the dad?
Joseph's not the dad, but he inherited the kingdom. He inherits the kingdom because of David's throne.
But by definition, isn't that not his genealogy?
Why not? It's his father, earthly father.
But I thought it was a virgin birth.
It was a virgin birth. He
Then
never
he's
had
not
sex.
the father.
Well, who? When it talks about him in the word, who is it? Who looked up? Aren't you the guy? What? You know.
See, but this is an interesting point not to glaze over, is to say one genealogy, that's another problem with the genealogy. One goes through Mary and one goes through Joseph, but Joseph is not his biological dad, so therefore there's no genealogy to be had.
The marriage with Mary, right, would have brought that son under that umbrella.
Well, this is what I think. I think Joseph was the dad, because I don't believe in the Immaculate Conception. I mean, it's I find it, and again, any of the words I'm using are not meant to provoke or be upsetting, but I find it a little ridiculous that we even think that that's a possibility. But we know why it's in there, right? So he's quoting. He wants to put the writer, right? He wants to give prophecy to this baby. So that's why he creates. But we also understand that he's quoting the Septuagint, which is the Greek translation of the ancient Hebrew text of book of Isaiah 7:14, where he's quoting them, and he's like, this will be born of a virgin. The problem is that Hebrew text, the word they use is alma, which means young woman. It doesn't mean virgin at all. It's used several other times in the Bible, and at no point is it referring to virgin. There is a word for virgin that's used approximately 55 times in the Old Testament, and it's a completely different word, and it specifically means have not had sex, virgin. They don't use that word. But in the Septuagint, the Greek translation, which is what the writer of that book would have been reading, they use the word parthenos. Parthenos does mean virgin, can mean virgin. So when they were reading it, they're like, oh, born of a virgin, prophecy. So they implement that to prove a certain theological point.
Why do you think they have to insert a prophecy? How many prophecies do you think Jesus fulfilled?
0.
0, really?
I don't see. I don't see how. So like if I write a book, something has happened, and then I go, okay, look, this is. I'm telling you. So there was no virgin birth, but I think there is. So I'm going to attribute that to this and go, oh, that's the prophecy. There's no proof of that. And that actually there's more abundance of information and proof and science that we understand now that makes that not even like a thing. So like it's like I also want to put out there when I say I may use language that kind of sounds like absolute, like I'm going, oh, for sure, for not. But I know that I actually don't. A lot of my stuff is like just very low probability. A very high probability. I think what's the probability that Joseph is not the father? I think it's really low. What's the probability that she conceived without having sex? Even lower. What's the probability that it was just a dude that wrote a story that was trying to prove a certain theological point to fulfill a prophecy to promulgate this religion? That makes sense that he would do that. That makes more sense. Like, I think I put the probability pretty high that it was just Joseph was just the dad,
So do you think that those early disciples, take Stephen as an example early on, right?
Okay.
As far as a martyr goes, right? Being stoned to death for what he saw and what he said. Do you think those guys would have just did it for a story, for someone that's inserting stories?
Well, I don't know. I mean, if you read those passages that talk about martyrdom, there's not really a clear narrative that shows they were given a choice. To like be a martyr, we don't know that they were being killed and given the choice, right? So a lot of death and murder and crap was happening politically in that area, that time. They don't really. If they say, okay, hey, you said something stupid, here, we killed you. Did they? The account doesn't really get into details to say that they gave him an option. Right, so he could have just died an agonizing death that was that was just inevitable. Like, you know what I mean? Like the right way to put it would to be number one, you'd have to show in the text that he was given the choice. Like, look, dude, we're going to kill you if you don't renounce this idea. Get rid of it and do this other thing, you know? That's not in the story. So to be – and I don't really – there's not really any accurate accounts of that being a choice. So as far as the martyrdom thing, you're right. For someone to die over that belief, that's a pretty strong thing to do. I don't know that we have proof that they had a choice.
Well, what about the disciples when they were always brought up in front of the Sanhedrin and stuff like that, and thrown in jail for those beliefs, right?
Yeah.
Let's forget that if we can't prove the death was by anything but a choice.
Mm-hmm.
What about when they were thrown in jail for that belief? Wouldn't you want to say, I'll denounce it? I don't want to be in jail.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I'm like, yeah, I would agree that is accurate, but then to go from there and go, okay, that proves Jesus is who he says he is because that person went to jail over a belief. I mean, that person could go to jail over a belief and it still not be true.
Well, but they were there. They were the ones walking with him, right? They would have seen him when he came back, when he rose from the dead. They would have seen him.
Yeah, but there's no first person accounts though. Like what we're reading are third person accounts.
In what way? Because John writes that he saw him. He was there. He was
and John being the more fantastical one, but even John is written in the third person. John does not say, "Hi, my name's John. This is who I am. I walked with Jesus. I saw him do this. I seen him do that." It's a biography written by somebody who we actually don't know. The name is never given. It's attributed to him. They say the title of it is the Gospels according to John.
Right.
Nowhere in there is it a person saying, "My name's John. I wrote this." It's written in the third person. All four Gospels are. There's no authorship. But about 300 years later is when the church was like, we got to give names to these books, you know, and they do attribute it to it. And a lot of times what that would happen is back then, okay, I want this book to do good. Let me give it the name of an author that I know, that people know. So if I say it was John, more people are more likely to read it. More people at that time were actually illiterate, but the people that were literate, more people are more likely to read it if I give it a strong, author. Let's say John wrote it. But there's no proof that anybody named John actually wrote it. It's all third person. So the only one who actually is in the first person is Paul. Right? Saul of Tarsus, whatever,
Saul
right?
Tarsus, yep.
Tarsus. But even he says he never actually met Jesus.
He saw him on the road.
He had a vision.
Yeah.
Right? He had a vision. He didn't say
and
like
I spoke to him.
Right. But he had a vision. Like I mean that's an odd term to say,
and
right?
And what did he say? Why are you persecuting me?
Yeah.
But who is he going after?
What do you mean?
Who was Saul at that time going after? If he said, why did Jesus say you're persecuting me?
Yeah.
Saul was going after those Jews that believed in the risen Christ, right? Sounds to me like
right.
And then,
so then once he, so if you look at like the chronology of Paul, right? Like he's got nothing before pre-resurrection, right? Resurrection happens, he becomes a believer, and he just writes basically the rest of the New Testament in letter form to churches, going, "Hey, this is how you're supposed to behave.
Right.
This is what you're supposed to do." But even he didn't know Jesus.
He would have encountered those that would have.
He would have. You're right.
He would have.
But he never wrote anything that says, I met this guy and I saw him do these miracles. And then the rest of the books that talk about those miracles, they're not written in the first person. So there's no actual, I mean, if you read the Bible as a whole, the only actual, if you give it to Paul, he does say, I had a vision, post-resurrection appearance. But he says a vision. He doesn't say he is alive and sorry.
That's okay.
And I'm talking to him like he's he describes it as a vision, which to me that's fishy. But the only other one I think is Peter that actually says, "Hi, my name is Peter, and I did definitely see this guy." You know what I mean?
I walked with him.
But other than that, there is none.
Yeah.
So, but we always, if you were to go to church right now and discuss what I just said right now, it's heresy. Like, how dare you think that the apostles didn't claim it? We read it in the Bible every day. Okay, read it again. That never says that. You know what I mean? Do you agree with me when I say that the New Testament, the at least the 4 Gospels, are anonymous?
I don't.
Okay.
But I will look into those.
Oh, perfect. Yes. Well, I'm really hoping you had an answer, but
like I said, not an apologetic. I'm not going to come back because I studied that, especially the book of Mark. I studied that book. I'm trying to remember where all the third persons were coming into play. To me, Matthew was a scribe. He was called from being a tax collector. He was there present with them. Those guys were present.
But that's what. So you're present, right? So you're describing the story of Mark and the story of Matthew. But where you're reading that story, who wrote that story does not claim to be that person.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look at that up.
Yeah, it's super interesting. Read the Bible again with a different perspective and try to find that, that, because again, this is another thing I'm saying. Doesn't mean the story's not true. It just is difficult for me when I pose these questions to people who do believe, that are like, there's no way. Like, I can't agree to any of this stuff because it would pull me away from. You're trying to pull me away from God, is what you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and
no,
so it's like
what you're bringing up.
It's like I can't.
Your faith is either your faith. You either trust and you know Him,
right,
or you don't. It's not. You're not going to say something that's going to knock my world over and say,
yeah.
Oh my gosh, you're pulling me away. What you're going to do is you have questions that I'm going to find some answers to,
yes,
and I'm going to understand where they're coming from, because I've never heard that. And like I said,
which is crazy though, right? It's crazy that, like you're talking about, how crazy the Bible lasted this long. And if you were to go to anybody that is a Christian, right? I'll tell you this. Anybody that is a pastor at any of your churches, they had to go through they had to get their degree, right? At a Bible college, or they go to school and they learn, right?
Yeah.
They get taught, right? There's all these different institutes that, teach you the Bible. All of those people know the books are anonymous and agree that the books are anonymous. But they don't teach that in church. Because why? I'm saying, like, why would we? Like, that doesn't mean anything. What it does do, though, is kind of put pause on somebody and go, oh, that's interesting, but not in a good way. It's interesting, like I said, it's kind of like, oh, we're not going to talk about that. So it's for everybody just to read the Bible constantly over lives and generations, and to not know that the books are anonymous. There's the books they're reading. They're biographies.
It's a situation like I mentioned that before. I believe you've got something in there that there could be some truth in there, and there's others because in my mind, and I don't know the schooling for the pastors. I just know some of their history. I didn't think they went to theological school. I'm sure they've read and went to classes and been instructed, but they basically have just learned on the fly from reading and understanding and being informed by God.
I think I would say that's even worse. To go to a church and go, oh, so you're teaching me your interpretation of what we're both reading. I don't know, you have the authority to do that.
Well, because if you're taught from verse to verse in the Bible, and not sermon, you would be right if they were teaching me just sermonettes and pulling something out of the Bible and just throwing it out there and then telling me that their experience or whatever the case might be would be wrong. But if I'm going through the Bible verse by verse, then I can follow up on that myself, right?
Yeah.
I can then see what is, to your point, right? You're bringing up some points. I'm going to go back and find out, right? Yeah. It's not that you're preaching me, you're teaching me, you're changing my mind on anything, right? It's the fact that you got a question, you raise it. Yeah. Same with what a pastor teaches me. And there's some things that sit on the Spirit and say, dude, they're completely way off base. Dude, you don't have to go look, man. They're just far off. Yeah. Or there's other times where you're sitting with a teacher that you know that they're sharing in the Word of God, and your heart's just being receptive.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting perspective. I never heard of that. I always took them as the Gospels as gospel, and That's what I believe.
The
but
good
I'm going to
news.
find this. It's speaking of good news. It gives you the four different perspectives of regards to what was going on there during that time, and it's 66 books. And what crazy is to your point, right? 66 books written by many authors, but yet you put them all
New
together.
Testament's 26.
Yeah, but 66 total books.
Yeah, to use the Torah as well. But even then, it's crazy that we, when the New Testament, how it forms, so I think that's an interesting idea to say the resurrection happens between 30 and 33 AD, but Mark doesn't even write his book until like 70 AD. So now we have decades that have passed. It's an oral tradition at this point, right? It's people just going village to village and saying, guess what I saw? Guess what I heard? Guess what this person told me? And then it's the story of Jesus, right? So we have 30 years of that, 40 years of that almost, right? Of just people telling stories. And then one day a guy, Mark, goes, well, we say Mark, but an anonymous author says, all right, I'm going to write this story down. It's a good story. But at this point, how accurate could that possibly be? You know what I mean? Like,
if it was written by man only, not very accurate.
Not very accurate, right?
But
Let's say it was man only, probably riddled with contradictions and
Could be, but
if God didn't inspire it.
Well, but do you know about Martin Luther King?
Yeah.
Okay. How much do you know about him?
I know that he wrote this book that was actually really cool about psychedelics. And yeah, he was a devout Christian, but he wrote some pretty crazy stuff,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But you know about him, right?
Right.
Okay. How long ago did he live?
I think he was killed in the 60s, but I could be wrong.
60 some odd years.
Okay, yeah, you go.
You're talking only 30 years difference between on the stories with Mark that you're saying, and people still know.
Yes.
Right?
No, you're right. And I think the story of Jesus lasted. For sure it lasted. What I'm putting in question is the accuracy of it, the historicity of it.
Where I was going to go with it is you may not have all the facts on doctrine. You know some.
A little bit.
Right. Just like whatever that situation was in the situation we're describing here, to that point, right? If it was man that was writing it, there was some truths inside that story somewhere.
Okay.
Okay, right?
You could pull them out of there and use them as utility in your life going forward.
Could be, right? But if you now believe it's the inherent word of God, it's infallible. You got no worries, right?
Just to clarify, you said inherent or inerrant?
Inerrant.
Inerrant. Okay, sorry. Like inherent.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm a little tongue-tied. I should get some water, but that's all right.
Would you like a glass of water?
No, I got water right here.
Oh, perfect.
Thanks. Oops.
Yeah, so just kind of going through, again, Jesus comes back from the dead, 33. Mark writes this down, 70. We think Matthew and Luke probably came 10, 15 years after that. They for sure had access to Mark. 95% of Mark is in those other two books, so they were basically just copying them. Those ones were written anonymously. Then you have John. Now, John's on his own. You can't line these guys up and go, because he uses words that are not used in the other ones. He uses phrases. It's more fantastical. He likes to use this literary concept of, like, he likes to tell the story so that he goes, Jesus will say something, and then somebody will be like, but that doesn't make sense. And then Jesus gets to clarify. It's like this, it's a tone, it's a way of telling a story to get like a point across, right? So if I was writing a movie, which John was writing like his book, right? And he's writing this book, and I want to say these certain things and make them more, pop out to people. So and there's several of those occasions where he talks about Jesus saying something, they get confused. The person would ask him to clarify, and then Jesus gets to clarify. There's one of those that I have an issue with, and I'm curious to hear your take on it. There's a conversation in John, I think chapter 3, and he's talking to Nicodemus, one of the Pharisees, right? And so Jesus and Nicodemus are having this conversation, and that's where we get born again, right?
Right.
So it's where he talks about,
Where Nicodemus was in the tree.
So he tells Nicodemus, he's like, yeah, in order to come to, and I'm going to murder all of this, but, come to the Father, you got to be born again. And he goes, born again? You mean I got to go back into my mom's womb? That doesn't make any sense. And he's like, no. Born again, like from above. Like
Spirit.
Spiritually, right? So the problem with that is this is a manuscript that's being written in Greek. The Jewish people, the Pharisee, Nicodemus, and Jesus in that time, in that area, would more than likely have been speaking Aramaic. Can we agree on that?
Oh, you're talking time frames and language. I think that would be true, but I don't hold me 100% against it.
Well, so that I can go through this.
Okay, go ahead.
Let's say it's Aramaic.
Okay.
So they're speaking Aramaic, but this guy's writing this book in Greek. In Greek, there's a word that is a double entendre. The Greek word from above also means born again. So it's a word that has two meanings, which makes sense that this conversation would have been that way, that Nicodemus would have been like, oh, I'm confused. You mean I had to go back in the womb? The problem is that in Aramaic, we know that there's not a double entendre word for born again and from above. Those are two different words. So we could say with pretty accurate certainty that this conversation was fabricated, that it didn't actually take place. Like he was just saying it he was making it up, because if it actually was taking place, it wouldn't have been taking place in Greek, and in Aramaic there isn't a double entendre for that. So it leads to say it brings me more towards the idea of like, oh, okay, it makes sense to me that this would take place by this person writing this book in around 90 AD about something that took place in like 30 AD and in a different language. You know what I mean?
Right. I'll have to look at the timelines, because I thought 90 AD he was writing Revelations, not necessarily his book, not necessarily the Gospel of John.
The person who wrote the book of John didn't write Revelations. That was John of Patmos. He actually says, "This is who I am. I'm John of Patmos." In the book of John in the Gospels, there's no authorship. It's anonymous. The book of Revelations is that crazy dude John of Patmos that just comes up with all kinds of wild stuff. Which is that, to me, if I was trying to promote Christianity, I would have left that one out. that one's the most fantastical, right? Like when you read it, you're just like, what? It almost more than likely is like allegory, metaphor. It's to be delved into more. You put, like you were talking about, it's a text that you would read and get something out of it, and it's probably less of this is an accurate account of what's going to happen. You know what I mean? And I think people do. I think actually, am I mistaken in that? Do you read that book and go, oh, this is actually going to happen? Or are you reading it thinking, oh, he's just, we can say if he talks about dragons and stuff like that, maybe he's talking about something else. Could mean something more geopolitical. More, you know what I mean? Is that how you read it, or do you read it?
I read the fact that when he's trying to describe things that's indescribable, because like how do you describe a nuclear missile or back then or a
I would say mushroom cloud.
Right? You would today.
Right.
Right? But not necessarily them back then.
Well, if he saw a nuclear explosion, that I think he would describe a nuclear explosion.
Or a flaming meteor coming down.
He could have seen that.
Yeah, but was it meteors? Was it classified as meteors back in those days? You don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I take it literally as far as what it is. What's going to happen is what's going to happen. And that end of the book, you don't want to be around for that end of the book on the wrong side.
Yeah.
But going back to the story in regards to John, the only thing I could say is that Nicodemus, if you continue on in regards to who helped Josephus bring down Jesus from the cross, was Nicodemus. So he showed his who he was and what he believed in at that particular point in time,
right.
where nowhere else was that the case. It was hidden, and because of his position in the council, the Jewish council.
Okay.
So whatever you believe it or not, that he was up at night, that he came in, asked Jesus, talked about being born again. In that same thing, it was him and Josephus that brought Jesus down from the cross and put him in Joseph's tomb.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
you gotta give something there that he was changed somehow or believed in something. So
For sure. But again, so to me, like, the whole premise of the conversation here is like, hey, these are the things that, and I'll be honest with you, these are the things that took me away from it. These are the things that instilled a higher or a lower probability of any of this being true. These are all little nitpicky things, but all the nitpicky gets me to say this is an error-riddled collection of books that don't line up, that don't, they have contradictions, they have mistakes. The book of Genesis 1, the chronology that's all wrong. We know that's wrong, right? Like when he says, the order of creation of sun, earth, and all that stuff, like we've already seen that's a wrong order. But you can invoke the idea of God, like, oh, God is in mysterious ways. He could do anything he wants. He's, omnipotent, omnibenevolent, all those words that mean super powerful, right? He could have done it any way he wants. The problem is that all these books are being written before the telescope and before the microscope. So
and look how accurate they were.
It's completely inaccurate.
Really?
Yeah.
Because the initial science textbooks were written upon the Bible's text.
Right, but then like the problem with religion is you can't. As a religious person, it's difficult to throw out bad ideas and continue the pursuit of truth, as opposed to like if we're just trying to discover things, like I'm trying to figure out my surroundings. I'm trying to figure out the world I live in. Like, what is that? I don't know. What's that up there? I don't know. Well, in the Bible, they describe things like they describe stars falling from the sky. They didn't know what stars were. They didn't know those were suns millions of light years away. They thought they were just right there. There was no flight. Man wasn't in the air, right?
Sure.
When these books were written, you would expect it to be written in this way based off of the knowledge they had at that time. You know what I'm saying? So you can't I can't fault them for not knowing what a star was, but if it's the inerrant word of God, inspired by God, he was describing it to these people wrong.
He was describing it for them to know what they would mean, right? For them to be able to put it into perspective.
Right, but to quote you're not verbatim, but to quote you about, I do believe that these are historical accounts. So if it's a historical account, these are events that you're saying because it's written in the Bible, this happened.
Sure.
The problem is that there's no proof of those things happening, and now that we are where we are now in life, and our understanding of the cosmos and the world and geology and biology and genetic, evolutionary biology, all these studies, all these fields of science that have been studied with devout people going after it, like you got the top guys working on this stuff, and they're like, oh yeah, so we know they didn't know what it was then, we know now, and that's not what it is. How can you not point to that and go, okay, if it's an inerrant word of God, inspired by God, why did he inspire inaccurate information to describe these things? But if he's God, he knows everything. He could have been like, yeah, that's a star. It's millions of light years away. It's not falling. And if it did fall, it's not a fall, it's a collision. It's like, it has its own gravitational pull, as a matter of fact. You know what I mean?
But would that person have, the reader of that book, would they have understood that?
Right. Okay. So then, if it's like metaphorical, allegory, any other kind of
no, just in a language that they can understand.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I there's a lot of things I don't understand, but when someone explains them to me, then I'm like, oh, okay. And if I'm talking to God, I think I could be a little understanding, especially if he was telling me, he's like, dude, you see that dot in the sky? Let me tell you what it is. And then, yeah, it's like they talk about the Native Americans seeing those boats coming in, Columbus's ships coming in, and they didn't know what they were, so they couldn't see them. It was unfathomable, these ships. so they just actually couldn't see them. But that's I don't know what's the word, hooey. What do you like for sure they saw them. They didn't know what they were, but they saw them. They're like, holy moly, right? And if they were to go back to their village and say what they saw, they can describe the ship. You know what I mean? So I don't know that that's...
Well, you think they could?
First,
big wood? How would you describe it? Large canoe?
Yeah.
That's
holy
what you
crap.
phrase it, right? Large canoe.
Probably perfect, right?
Right?
Like the super big canoe, carrying a bunch of people.
But yet we would look back now and say, a canoe? It wasn't a canoe. It was a ship.
But we can see that what he was going for,
but
right?
You could see, but you could see where what he was coming up with his description, right?
But he describes them falling from the sky. That those stars didn't fall from the sky. They can't.
Okay. Well, think about when they wiped out Sodom and Gomorrah. What fell from the sky? Was it stars or meteors?
Okay, meteor.
Gotcha. So, but it still fell from the sky. Right?
Ah. Shooting stars. Okay.
You gotta.
So
what I'm our minds
right
back then compared to where they are now. Our knowledge. I mean, we look at DNA today, right? Years ago, DNA, fingerprints. I mean, how we evolved, yet it was always there. Columbus used the Bible to know that the world was round.
What I'm describing is. What bothers me is the ignorance, right? So, what you're saying makes sense. If there's some shooting stars. How am I supposed to explain that to them that it's a meteor and all that stuff, But it's wrong. And if I'm God, why am I describing it wrong? Why is there ignorance if I'm God?
I believe everything is personable in regards to what the letters are, because he's a personable type of God.
Yeah.
Right. And I believe he's writing to the audience that he's trying to invoke on. And back in the day, if you look at the Israelites and stuff like that, I mean, the Jewish people, look at all the different populations that were around them. The Babylonians, the Egyptians, everybody else. What were they calling them? So he was referencing what people were calling it. It wasn't the fact that he was trying to describe something uniquely different. Right.
So none of them knew, right?
So he described this and put it in this fashion, and things like that. But here's what I believe. Where my feeling is that I believe you've searched, but I believe you need to continue to search.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think that you hit a lot of great knowledge, but you're not seeing the whole picture, okay? And I think that's what you're trying to get. That's what you're hoping it was going to come from me. But like I said, I'm not an apologetic.
Again, no, I definitely didn't. So to me, I think opening up a dialogue of, I want you to know me. I want you to know me. I want my mom to know me. And for me to have thoughts and ideas, but stay quiet about any of it.
So this is your medium?
It's, you know what I mean? Like it's like I think one of the most important things in our existence is the relationships that we have and develop. Not with Jesus, but with people, with our parents, with our siblings, with our friends, at our coworkers. All these relationships that I'm developing that I cherish, my kids, everything. Like to me, that's the meaning of life. Like I enjoy these things. So how important my family is, my aunts, my uncles, my cousins, and when we come together, that means the world to me. So to live in that space and feel that I need to kind of, I have to be a different person in order to fit in, right. I guess you could say. I mean, it's uncomfortable,
See,
so
that's what we want. We want the real you.
Right. So here's the thing: is because these conversations don't happen there, and I'm okay with that. To me, this is my release.
Good.
This is my
Great.
Let's have these conversations, but let's have a space for it. Sure. Because if I was just to do this, like I said, on Thanksgiving, I'm just like, you know what, Jesus is not real.
Yeah.
Like end of party. Like that's
just don't say it to your grandmother.
Oh my, yeah, yeah. I definitely see. But I don't want to offend people. I don't mind offending people because I think being offended by my ideas. I think ideas being offensive in general it's pretty ridiculous that an idea can be offensive. Like
It was exactly how we opened this up
Yeah.
in regards to Charlie Kirk, right?
Yeah.
His ideas were different. Someone thought it was offensive.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh
When
my
it's
God.
not. It's supposed to have open dialogue and communication. Well,
Yeah.
where I was going to go was because you brought some good questions up for me
Mm-hmm.
to do some research, but I've got 2 different books I brought for you.
Okay.
Okay, I can either leave both or just one, and then we can work on it from over there. But I want to enhance some knowledge with you, so you can ask more questions.
Curious if I've already read them.
Really? Okay, babe. What's the
So C.S. Lewis.
Mere Christianity?
I have not read that one, but I have read that author.
Okay, and then the Faith of the Atheist.
You didn't bring that.
It's in the car.
Oh, is that William Lane Craig?
No.
Oh, he has a book called I don't have enough I don't have enough faith to be an
And
atheist.
there's nothing but the truth. It talks about the things.
Are you related?
No,
I know.
Are you promoting? Hey.
I'm not. But
Yeah, leave both. I'll
Okay.
read both.
All right. Okay. And then I wanted to stir more questions. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Because I'm going to take back what the couple questions that you got me, because it's getting close to my bedtime.
Hey, I'm with you. I'm an old man as well. Yeah, I mean my sleep schedule is
Your uncle hasn't been sleeping well.
Yeah.
I've been fighting this hip problem, but I'm going to. I definitely appreciate the conversation.
Yes.
Okay, and I'm definitely going to go back and do some more research, especially in regards to the Gospels and also Genesis 1 and 2.
Genesis 1
So,
and
is there
2.
anything else you want to leave me with before we wrap up?
No, I think
How about your determinism?
Oh, determinism.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So I don't believe in free will. I don't think free will exists. I think it's a made up term that we try to attribute it to, and
Did you conclude that on your own?
no, this is obviously I'm taking it from, originally what I was doing to consume information was a way where I would read a book, and then on that topic, and then I would go, oh, this is interesting, and then I would go on YouTube, which is probably the devil, but interesting enough, I would find professors giving lectures. It's completely free. You can find Oxford, Harvard, these really prestigious, and you just watch the lecture like as if you're in the class.
Yeah.
I would watch lectures on these topics. I would find a topic and I would really hone in on that topic, whatever it was, and then I would watch lectures. I would also watch debates. So I want to hear the strongest point from both sides of this argument. And as I'm going through these debates and lectures and books, my opinion's forming off of the information I'm collecting. And so, yeah, most of my ideas, most of my thoughts, not original, but it's where I land, So I go, what's the question?
Yeah.
What is free will? In my opinion, or from my understanding, I guess I could say it's not an opinion, but from my understanding, if you were to relive any one specific moment in your life 1,000,000 times, in the perspective of free will, the idea is that you can do whatever you want in that moment in a plethora of different ways. If you relive that moment, you could change the outcome in the idea of free will. Not to be confused with freedom of choice, which is obvious, right? But determinism just describes it in a way of saying that moment in your life, if you relived it 1,000,000 times, you would always do the same thing 1,000,000 times out of 1,000,000, because the thing you did was inspired by everything that led up to that moment. Do you see what I'm saying? So when I get up to go to work in the morning, like I wake up, it's not free will that I have free will that I could just get up. I gotta go to work. I gotta pay bills.
Right.
Go down the line. Why do I have to pay bills? Because I need this house. Why do I need the house? Kids need shelter. Family needs a place to go. Why do I need food? Like if I go and I'm going to go have a steak right now, it's because I'm hungry. Why am I hungry? Because my body is, in need of fuel. There's just, everything that happens is happening because of what came before it. So determinism is just a description of what's taking place. You still have freedom to do whatever you want. It doesn't leave it to say that, oh, well, it's already predetermined, so I could just kill people and, it doesn't matter because who am I? I'm not in control here. You're absolutely in control. You're absolutely in control. And you have the freedom to choose, okay, do I want to do this or do I want to do that? Do I want to do this podcast? I do. Why? Because I've had questions. Why is it with you? Because I feel you have an opposing opinion, and I think if I brought somebody on right now and went, I think the Bible's false, and he goes, yep, end of podcast. You have to have a back and forth. So I'm just saying, like, everything has a reason, and everything has like a catalyst, or the catalyst would be the beginning.
An agency, yes.
Right, an agency. So everything you're doing is, it's inspired by what came before it. That's my view. I don't know. And it's for someone to just go, oh, well, I have free will. But what do you mean you have free will? Like, describe that. What does that describe? It describes nothing. Oh, the fact that I could do whatever I want from this point going forward. I could throw my Rubik's Cube down. That's free will. No, I was trying to make a point, so that's why I did that. There's a way to describe everything that led to that moment. And if I relive that moment a million times, I would always do the same thing. So to me, that's not free will. Now, the other thing is random. I think there's randomness in the universe, but by its very definition, it's not free will. So everything that you're doing was like, you are a Christian because somebody taught that to you. You didn't become a Christian out of nothing. It came from somewhere.
Yes, you had to. Yes,
somebody taught it to you. You heard it.
Okay.
You saw it. Right? There was something that got you to the next,
it, yeah.
and then there was an action. You describe going through a divorce, seeing your baby girl be born, like all these things that brought you closer to like pinpoint this. This is something here. So everything that is happening is bringing you closer and closer to that, and then to say that, oh, it was free will. Why I'm here? Why I have these thoughts? It's all free will. I've gotten to where I'm at now because I had free will. That doesn't describe anything. The determinism is a description, like that you can lay out. But just to go, but it's the kind of the same thing with the whole God thing. It's like, oh, we don't know what that is. There's God. What came before the Big Bang? We don't know. No, it was God creating the universe. Right?
Right.
What we actually know is we don't know. That's what we know. We can't see before the Big Bang. We can see the Big Bang. We can see just after the Big Bang. We can see it, right? It's in the sky. You can see the cosmic radio background wave, right? I'm probably saying that wrong. But you can see it. You can measure it. You can touch it. You can taste it. You can lick it. It's there. We can't see further than that. So anything further than that, we just go, what's over there? We don't know. But to a Christian, it's God. The unseeable, you know what's okay? So here's a good one to maybe close this off on is, I think there is a version of Christianity that I could see myself kind of being attracted to. Obviously, everybody wants to live forever, right? I want to go to heaven and all that stuff. By the way, I don't believe any of that is a thing, but there's a version of it. Like there's this comedian Pete Holmes. I'm not sure if you know who he is.
I'm familiar, but go ahead.
Google him tonight.
Okay.
He's got a bit where he describes and I'll actually clip it into here and to end this podcast. But he describes the atheist version of something coming from nothing and the Christian view of God created us. It's a funny little clip, but I think you'll get a kick out of it. I believe he's a Christian, so when he's describing it, he's actually kind of dogging on the atheist. And so when I hear it, though, even though I don't agree with him, the way he puts it, I'm like, oh, ooh, got me. You know? And so anyway, watch it tonight. It's very interesting. Actually, watch him in general. He's hilarious. Okay. But he's got a really interesting take on the Christian religion, because he's a follower of Christ, but you know he kind of he adds it into his act a little bit, but it's not like an overwhelming like oh, this is all Christian God stuff, but it's in there, you know. You may not agree. You may even hear his stuff and go, no, this is not biblical. But I'm just saying. If you watch him, it's pretty funny. Right. So, again, thank you so much for coming. You know what? And this is actually, I'm so excited about this. The fact that this didn't just, because this is how I was hoping it would end, where we go, this was good. Let's do our homework and do another one.
That's it.
So I absolutely love it. Thank you so much.
Some people think God created the universe. Some people think nothing created the universe, which is the funniest guess. And the nothing people make fun of the God people. They say God doesn't exist. I'm like, okay, maybe. But you know what definitely doesn't exist? Nothing. That's the defining characteristic of nothing, is that it doesn't exist. So what are we talking about? Either you think it's God, something you can't see, touch, taste, photograph, and science can't prove, or you think it's nothing, something you can't see, touch, taste, photograph, and science can't prove. But I think we can all agree, if your nothing sometimes spontaneously erupts into everything, that's a pretty goddamn magical fucking nothing, you guys. And ask the nothing people, what happens when you die? They'll tell you, nothing. You go into nothing. I'm like, you mean you merge back with your creator? That's heaven, bitch.